look at the weather.
It's beautiful here.
Non-stop rain.
Oh, man, it is a blazer out there.
It's cold and it's shivery.
It is cold.
Really coming down here.
I really enjoy your weather reports.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we're talking weather in a whole new way. From historical events to what's coming up, plus weather news, science, safety, fun facts, and more.
I like where this is going.
This is Weather Weekly. Weather Weekly with Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey.
Welcome again, friends. Appreciate you spending time here on episode number 8 of Weather Weekly. I'm your host, Marcus Bailey. Good to be with you here on the week of March 15th. It does happen to be Severe Weather Preparedness Week here in central Indiana as we're recording this on a Tuesday. You'll likely be picking this up on a Wednesday or a little bit later if you're listening to this later. Tornado sirens will sound at 10:15 Eastern Daylight Time across the state of Indiana on Tuesday. So that's an annual thing as we are gearing up for severe weather season. And I think we've got a good on-topic discussion on tap here for Severe Weather Preparedness Week as we do gear up for the spring season and the active weather season. We'll talk more about our guests coming up in just a bit, but I'm real excited about this one because we're going to hit this on an anniversary of a tornado in a major city. So more on that in just a bit. Let's talk about what you missed weather-wise while we were away. It's been a couple of weeks since we've talked, and a lot has happened. Of course, we had that big snow several weeks ago here in central Indiana, but since then, boy, a nice warm-up across our area this past week. The first couple of weeks of March have really shaped up to be pretty nice across our area. Hit our first 70-degree day already for the season. That's a couple of weeks ahead of schedule. And then that followed up by some ice, about 1/10 of an inch of ice on Monday, the 15th in central Indiana. Had some gusts up to 50 miles per hour. And we had thousands of power outages as a result. Thankfully, the ground was too warm to cause any significant travel issues. But yeah, the ice kind of accumulating on the elevated surfaces led to some power outages almost statewide. So a nasty, nasty day. This was part of the same system that just wreaked havoc nationally. The big story was the heavy snow, a couple feet of snow out toward the Denver area. There were lots of travel delays due to that. In fact, locally speaking, here in Indianapolis, I know there was many flights delayed trying to get to Denver. But even sports-wise, they had to delay the start of the Pacers and Nuggets game Monday night on the 15th because the Pacers could not make it into town from Phoenix from their previous game. So they had to tip things off at 10 p.m. local time in Denver because of that. So it was, it was pretty intense there in terms of the snow. That covered basically Colorado. It covered Wyoming and parts of Nebraska. On the front end, on the warmer end of things, boy, we really kind of kicked in severe weather season in a hurry. Several tornadoes reported that did some damage in the panhandle of Texas over the weekend, specifically Saturday afternoon and Saturday night. And then we also had some severe weather with tornadoes reported in parts of the Plains, Kansas, specifically on Monday. And I think it's just kind of the appetizer before what will be a busy week as we are recording this week. And I think Severe Weather Preparedness Week here in Indiana falls at a great time because I think weather is going to be on the forefront news-wise for this upcoming week. Slight risk for severe weather for parts of the plains for this Tuesday as we're recording. And I think we may have to recap a little bit or the next time we talk next week about a potential or the first potential severe weather outbreak day for the Deep South, portions of Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, parts of Tennessee, specifically southern Tennessee, are under a moderate risk for severe weather. So on a scale of 1 to 5, that's at a 4. So you may be listening to this after this is already played out. But again, we're kind of leading into the event. We will see how that plays out. But it does look like there could be some significant severe weather, including a violent, strong, long-lived tornadoes, lots of hail, and some pretty damaging wind as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. Love to recap kind of where the forecast went, and hopefully if there is a lot of activity, we can talk to somebody locally that had to experience that for the day on Wednesday, maybe on a future Weather Weekly podcast. So we'll be dealing with that. Looks like we're going to see things warming up, but lots of ups and downs as you would expect. And of course, we're already into meteorological spring officially here in the Midwest. We hit that on March 1st, but spring, astronomical spring, will kick off on Saturday, this upcoming Saturday. So we'll be officially into the spring season. And it looks like that we do have many signs of spring up ahead with a much warmer pattern coming our way. All right, so that's what you missed while you were away over the last week or so, weather-wise across much of the Midwest and the nation's the lower 48 for that matter. Real excited about our topic today, and like I said, it really kind of ties into Severe Weather Awareness Week here in central Indiana. I'm talking to a former coworker of mine back in my Peoria, Illinois days, and a good friend, meteorologist Cody Murphy. I kind of saw Cody come on very early on in his career, fresh out of college, knew that this young man was going to go far in the business. He has now been in his hometown of Nashville for the last 3 years, and morning meteorologist there at Fort Warren in Nashville. And he's been kind of in a few other spots as well. And we'll talk a little bit about his career. And more specifically, we're just past the 1-year anniversary of that massive tornado that tore through the city of Nashville in early March last year. A lot of devastation there. I actually was able to see a little bit of that when I was traveling to a weather conference in Huntsville, Alabama. It was about 3 days later, and it was just devastating and dangerously close to the skyline of Nashville. My guest on Weather Weekly coming up, Cody Murphy from Nashville. We'll talk to him next here on Weather Weekly. Welcome back to Weather Weekly. Good one here this week. And as I mentioned, as we are now in the heart of Severe Weather Preparedness Week on this week of March the 15th here in central Indiana, I think this is a very good topic. We're going to be talking a lot about severe weather. Specifically, I wanted to talk about the Nashville tornado as we just passed the 1-year anniversary of that happening. But my next guest here has been through several major weather events. He is a meteorologist at WSMV in Nashville, Tennessee. He also has worked in Fort Myers, Florida. He's also my coworker in Peoria, Illinois, where he was recognized as a regional Edward R. Murrow Award winner, also a national award winner. And he was also Emmy nominated for a tornado that happened back in 2013 in Washington, Illinois. Cody Murphy, my friend, how are you, buddy?
Doing great, Marcus. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, good to have you here. Man, it's been a while since Cody and I have talked, and we've just been kind of catching up before we started recording this podcast. But I've known Cody since he was fresh out of college, and it's been a pleasure via social media watching this young man grow into a fine meteorologist. And you'll hear, because he's gone through a lot. You've been through more. I think I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've had several severe weather events I've had to cover, but in a much shorter time for you. You've had a lot. You've had a lot in your career over. How long have you been doing this now, Cody?
So I graduated from Western Kentucky in 2012. So what would that be? A little
Quick
under
math.
9 years?
Not even 10 years yet.
So,
wow.
Yes. And you know, man, I think the only thing, let me start with this. I think the only thing that I haven't covered yet are dust storms and wildfires. I think I pretty much got everything else out of the way already.
Yeah. So okay, go ahead and let's start from the beginning before we kind of dive in deep to a lot of this severe weather that you have seen in your relatively short career. So you mentioned you went to Western. How did you even kind of get interested in meteorology and to begin with?
So it started probably my sophomore year of college. I was going to Middle Tennessee State University, and just one day, me and my buddy were driving around, and there was just some like lightning flashes off in the distance, and we didn't have anything to do on a random given afternoon. And I was like, "Hey, man, let's go chase these storms." You know, I just so we started driving towards them, and you know, thankfully they weren't like super severe because I had no idea what I was doing at that point. So I got caught in a big rainstorm and, had to pull over on the side of the road, and then it passed, and then we kept chasing. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, I think I could do this for a living. Like, I want to be a storm chaser. This sounds awesome,
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of switched my career path at MTSU. I looked for a meteorology program. MTSU does not offer that, but they have an awesome geology program and geography program, but not a meteorology program.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to transfer to Western Kentucky University in 2010. So, which was nice because at that point I was already in college for 3 years, so I got all my general eds out of the way.
Right.
So when I went to Western in 2010, it was just a deep dive into meteorology. It was awesome. So I just spent 2 years at Western, knocked out all my meteorology courses, and then, luckily before I even graduated in 2012, Rick Mull, our former news director, gave me a call and took a chance on me. And I landed with Marcus Bailey in Peoria, Illinois.
And then you went off and running.
It was fun.
We loved having you too. You brought a lot of energy, and I knew then you as long as you were going to continue to work hard, I knew that you were going to go big places. And I was really excited when I found out. Obviously, and we'll talk about your time in Florida because that's a unique thing, especially for a kid that's from Tennessee and you spent time in the Midwest working first. That's a whole different story and weather forecasting down there. But I was super excited.
Yeah.
I was super excited to see you come back home to Nashville. I knew you grew up in the area. I knew you had family there. And, kind of like myself, I enjoyed my time in Peoria, but coming back home to Indianapolis meant an awful lot to me. So I know it probably means a lot to you to be back home in Nashville, too.
Absolutely, yeah. It took a little while, but honestly, anybody listening right now, if you're questioning whether you want to leave your home market, if you're getting into meteorology or really just any industry, I say leave for a couple of years. You just get a different perspective on life, and it just kind of changes your outlook. So I honestly think leaving where I grew up was one of the best things for me before coming back. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, got to get you out on your own and kind of get thrown into adulthood. But, to the point that I made earlier, in terms of just specifically meteorology, it kind of threw you into a whole lot of different situations. You probably weren't accustomed to big-time snows in Nashville. You can get snow down there, but, up in Peoria, we got some brutal cold. We had some snows we had to deal with when you were up there. And then, obviously, your time in Florida as well. So You've had a little bit of everything, and I do want to specifically talk about kind of the severe weather situations, and I guess we can kind of go in chronological order here because obviously I wanted to do this one because it's Severe Weather Preparedness Week here in Indiana, and so we'll focus on kind of just after the 1 year anniversary of the Nashville tornado. But let's start from early on in your career, and obviously the big outbreak that you had to deal with, I would say your first one, is that right? Your first significant outbreak was 2013, the November 2013 tornado outbreak in Illinois, right?
Yeah, November 17th, right? I'm pretty sure that was the date.
Yes.
The Washington, Illinois tornado.
Yes.
That was wild.
Well, and that was kind of, when we look back at that, that was more of a slam dunk, and we can kind of compare and contrast that day to what you dealt with a year ago in Nashville. But November 17th was a high-risk day, right? So kind of just walk me through that day. If I remember correctly, that was a Sunday. Walk me through how just kind of that day played out.
So let me back up one day before that. So on Saturday, I just vividly remember the feel to the air. It just had that feeling to it. And I remember I got very little sleep that night because I was just like, all right, this is going to be my first big storm to forecast and to track. This is going to be, the first one of my career. And man, I was so scared. I was so nervous about it. Thankfully I had you and Carissa there to help me along. But I just remember Saturday being so stressed and got no sleep because I just was, just kind of losing my mind about it. And then we got into Sunday, and remind me what time that one came through. It was like late morning.
I believe it was a late. I don't remember the exact time, but it was I want to say it was kind of in that 10 a.m., 11 a.m. time frame, if I remember correctly.
Right. Right. So I just remember that it being it was Sunday, and then I remember it being a church time, and there was that really big church next to that neighborhood, that Washington.
Right.
And I remember we were saying, it could have been a lot worse because, everyone was at church, and somehow that church was pretty much unscathed from the tornado, and it wasn't really that far away. You know what I mean? And so I just remember that whole day talking about the fact that it was Sunday, people were at church and not really in their homes in that subdivision. And I mean, that subdivision was wiped.
It was unbelievable, the damage.
Hundreds of homes that were gone.
Yep. Unbelievable. I've never seen anything like that. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Even still, now that I've got several more storms under my belt and everything, I mean, as far as one particular storm and tornado goes, I mean, that's probably the most damage I've seen out of all the ones that I've covered. Now, of course, the Nashville one last year was a little different because, I mean, this thing was on the ground for forever, several miles, and it touched so many different counties. But still, just the Washington, Illinois tornado, I remember getting out there that next morning because I think we got up to like 70, the upper 70s the day of the tornado.
Yes. And
then the cold front came through, and I was out there that very next morning. So the first sunrise after the tornado in Washington, Illinois, and as soon as the light touched the subdivision that was destroyed, I was just like, oh my goodness, like this is insane. I mean, there is just debris all over the place. It's like 35 degrees outside. It's freezing. It's so cold right now, and it's hard to believe that we just took a 50-degree swing in less than basically 24 hours.
If I remember correctly, because I think we all at the station volunteered to help clean up. When we were all out there, I think it was snowing. It wasn't heavy snow, but it was like flurries. And this was only a couple of days after the event. So, it was it was an extreme from the 70s. And I think the dew points were in the 60s. I mean, just that's unheard of for really any November, but that was middle November. I mean, we were close to Thanksgiving by that point. That was just very unusual.
And so, and same thing here in the Midwest as it is in Tennessee. You're at least for Tennessee, it's March, April, May is our severe weather season.
Right.
But when we did our severe weather awareness in Tennessee, it was the first week of March.
Okay.
I reinforced, hey, look, November is our second severe weather season. You have to pay attention to these storms in, the early fall and early winter because, sometimes you get these huge temperature contrasts and it just breeds storms. And, and that's exactly what happened in November in Illinois.
Absolutely. All right. So since we're kind of on the top, and I do want to hit up on the hurricanes season that you dealt with because that's such a different dynamic. But since we're kind of tying this together here, take me back a year ago. I was, and I'll say this, I actually ended up passing through about 3 days after the tornado hit last year. I was on my way down to Huntsville for a weather conference with our weather vendor that's down there. And
Barron?
Yeah, it is Barron. And so I cut right through there, and it was right on. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if I remember correctly, it felt like it was just northwest of downtown when I was merging off of 65 and coming around downtown. Is where I saw a lot of damage right in that northwestern kind of corner. So that's the only damage I really saw. But I know you were able to probably see a whole lot more. But just kind of take me through. I guess let's go leading up to the day, and because I don't remember exactly how it played out. I think I remember there being some outlooks already out about that day, and then take me through the actual event, and then kind of the aftermath as well.
So I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to look it up right now while I'm talking, but I'm pretty sure we only had a slight risk for that day in Middle Tennessee. And it produced an EF3 that went right through the heart of Nashville. Right. And so that right there, that's the huge difference between Nashville's tornado and the Washington, Illinois tornado, because we had a high risk that day in Washington, Illinois.
Right.
But here it's just a slight risk, and that's the thing that I try to convey to people. It's just the risks mean one thing, but treat them all the same. Really, treat it as a high-end tornado day, no matter the risk level. It's just because you just never know. You know what I mean? It just takes one storm. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it really does just take one storm to really put some perspective on you. So, okay, so let me back up.
Okay.
Day of, it is like 11:30 at night on March 2nd. My alarm goes off. I look at the radar on my phone, and I see a couple. There's at that time, there's currently no severe thunderstorm warnings, no tornado warnings. Got a couple of watches, but no warnings at the moment. And so I see this cell, I don't know, 25, maybe 30 miles west of where I live. And I was like, oh, okay, no big deal. Not really worried about it right now. Went back to sleep, woke up like an hour later, saw it starting to kind of wind up a little bit. It had a severe thunderstorm warning on that point. And I was like, okay, we've got people at the station. We're covered. I can go back to sleep. And so I woke up like 25 minutes later just because I caught some like flashes of lightning, through my eyelids. And so I looked at the radar again. And when I saw the hook, I mean, it wasn't even tornado warned at that point, but I saw it hooking. Okay. And I was just like, my heart dropped. I was like, oh my goodness, I got to go. I got to go. Like, Brittany's in bed too. And she's just like, what's going on? And I'm like, I got to go. Sorry, got to go right now. And I am just cruising down the interstate at like 85 miles an hour, trying to get to work. And I-40 is a west to east road, and it basically paralleled that storm cell.
Okay.
And so like as I'm cruising down the interstate, way off in the distance, because Middle Tennessee's pretty hilly, so you get some good vantage points when you get over a certain spot, and I can just see lightning flashes, maybe even some power flashes towards downtown Nashville. And I'm just like, dude, I just got this awful feeling in my gut.
Yep.
And so I get to work. All right, so I pull up behind my news director, Mitch, and I get out, and he's just rocked. He's just like, I just went through it. I live in Germantown. It just went right over where I live. He was like, get your gear and go downtown.
Oh my.
And so I book it downtown. Within probably 30 minutes of the tornado passing through, I was downtown. It was crazy. It was like a war zone. No power. All you hear are sirens, alarms going off. The overwhelming smell of gas from all the pipelines that had burst. People literally crawling out of their apartment buildings, like literally through rubble. And I remember seeing people with like suitcases full of stuff, whatever they could, salvage before having to leave their apartments. Dogs in cages, people just walking around like, dude, what just happened? Right. This is 1:30 in the morning, the worst time ever to get a tornado. Most people are asleep, and so it was just crazy, absolutely crazy from that perspective. And then, a couple hours later, the sun comes up, and then you really get a full extent of the damage. And I mean, just blocks of downtown Nashville just demolished. And O'Reilly's Auto Parts was destroyed entirely. Regions Bank was gone. I was stationed at this Vista apartment complex pretty much the whole morning, and I'm one of the drone pilots for the station now. And so I was flying the drone over the apartment complex, and the roof was ripped off. I mean, you could see clear into people's third-story apartments. Wow. It was just wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I guess what were the fatalities during that tornado? Do you remember?
I think I'm trying to look it up. I know it's 20 plus.
Okay.
I'm trying to find storm reports, damage surveys. I know it's 20 plus off the top of my head.
It says 25. 25 people. Does that sound
25.
Right? Okay. So,
yeah, that sounds about right.
And it says 309 injured. And I would assume, would you kind of, part of that, I guess, is you're going over an extremely populated area, right? But would you attribute a lot of that to the time of when that came through? Would you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was an EF3 when it came over areas like Germantown, and that's probably what you saw from the interstate was Germantown.
Okay.
It's just a hip poppin' place in downtown Nashville. It's got a big restaurant scene, big bar scene. A lot of people hang out in the Germantown area. Okay. A lot of people live there. So yeah, I think so. A lot of it's probably just from bricks flying around, hitting people, stuff like that. And then once that tornado actually crossed over the Cumberland River, it was in East Nashville, which is another densely populated area.
Right.
And I want to say, I'm pretty sure 5 people died in East Nashville.
Okay.
And then the same storm system, the same cell. I mean, the EF3 was on the ground. Let me try to look it up. Path length, so 19 miles. That was in Waverly, Tennessee. So there's McHugh in Nashville. So this thing was on the ground for 60 miles.
Wow. Well, that's
an EF3.
Jeez. So that's a long time for a strong tornado to be on the ground.
60 miles, man. Yeah. I mean, max width 1,600 yards. So I mean, yeah, it's crazy. 60. Like when I finally, once the National Weather Service surveyed and finally sent out their full conclusion of the storm, I mean, 60 miles. My goodness, man. I mean, this thing is forever long. And it was all the same cell. I mean, it just kept bouncing. You know what I mean? It was
right.
An EF1 in West Tennessee. It bounced up, dropped back down, EF2. Back and forth, EF2, EF0, and then EF3 in Nashville. And then it got even stronger once it got to Putnam County in Cookeville. It was an EF4 then.
Wow. That's unbelievable. It says on there, the Cookeville tornado, 19 deaths, 87 people injured.
Yeah.
So that's when you said it was
max
an EF4.
width 900 yards.
Yeah, 900 yards. So, man, that's incredible. And I'm reading just some of the other details here about, you mentioned I-40, which cuts through Nashville east to west.
Right.
And it says that they had to shut down parts of I-40 for like 12 hours. Because you said it basically was real close to it, right?
It paralleled it the entire time. It's kind of wild. It's like it was just like holding the interstate's hand the whole way. You know what I mean? And so if you were to drive on 40 eastbound going out towards Cookeville, I mean, still to this day, a year later, you can see where the trees were snapped off on, not directly on the interstate, but like, in someone's field, a couple acres away. But you can still see where those trees were snapped and uprooted and stuff like that.
And you said this had a no-brainer hook on it, too. I mean, did it hold that pretty much? I know you weren't able to probably track that like you did, say, the Washington tornado, where you were in-house the entire event. You were kind of on the ground, but I'm sure you were kind of glancing at radar, or you may be able to kind of look back at it. I mean, did it hold that hook for the vast majority of the event? Did it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this was, textbook, supercell tornado on the ground all the way for, basically 80 to 90 miles. And so when I was in Nashville, again, I was on the ground, so I was like, trying to make sure people were okay while trying to report on the situation. But obviously you want to check on your phone and your radar to make sure that another one's not coming right behind you.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, from what I can recall, and that whole day was I think I worked like 26 hours that day. I mean, it was a full on day on.
Yeah.
So it was a long day, but yeah, I mean, it was a textbook tornado, one that I hope I never see again in Nashville or any portion of Tennessee or any state in the country.
Well, I mean, and you've been like, and I think we all kind of had that feeling after Washington, because that was kind of the first really super destructive tornado of my career. I'd covered some others that had done some significant damage, but it was very confined to small areas and stuff like that. After that first one from Washington, at least my theory was, I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. Like, not that I'm done, like I don't want to do this anymore, but, I think you can relate to this. Being a weather nut, you get geeked out about severe weather, right? And you live for those moments where you get to cover severe weather events, specifically tornadoes. I mean, you and I had sat and watched the great James Spann down in Birmingham and how he covers severe weather and lots of others, So you always want to be prepared for those types of events. But I think after Washington, you never, at least in my career, I never really got to that like excitement level. I always wanted to be prepared and wanted to cover it the same way, but I didn't get geeked out and be like, oh yeah, we've got all this stuff. I was more of like a feeling of dread. Does that make any sense?
No, absolutely. I think that's probably the best way to say it. You know, you're a weather guy. You went to school for this. This is your job. You're excited for it, but at the same time, you have to just know that your job is to inform people so that way they can stay safe. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and I'm sure it was. I was going to say, I'm sure it was probably even more so impactful because, you know, this being a severe weather event, this was your hometown. This is where you grew up. I'm sure that probably hit even more at home for you this time around, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, some of the areas around Germantown and other portions where that storm hit, you know, like I used to go there with my grandfather 25 years ago, you know? Yeah. And so some of these buildings that he used to take me in, you know, just aren't there anymore. Right.
So, okay, you got me through the event. Where are we at a year later now? How's those parts of downtown Nashville looking now a year later?
So a lot of it's rebuilt. There are still tarps on some of the homes. You know, some of the old historic buildings, thankfully, they decided to restore a lot of those. It was kind of unfortunate, like a couple of weeks afterwards, you know, the city was like, should we just condemn these places and just bulldoze them and start over? And thankfully, a lot of advocates in the community were like, no, these buildings have been through this before. These buildings have been here for 50 plus years. We're going to rebuild it, you know, just like we did 50 years ago. And so that was very rewarding to see. And, you know, I haven't even touched on this yet, but, you know, this was early March. You know, everyone's out there afterwards rebuilding. The community is just crazy coming together and, you know, helping each other out. And then 3 weeks later, pandemic. Yep. And all of a sudden we can't even be next to each other to help out anymore. You know, so that was just a different problem to deal with, you know, 2.5, 3 weeks after the March 3rd tornado. So it was like a 1-2 punch. It was awful.
I was just, as you were getting to that point, it just hit me because I was thinking about that. And I'm like, surely the pandemic has probably hindered some of those recovery efforts, at least somewhat, because I remember coming back from that Barren Weather Conference, and it was just kind of being talked about being an issue here in the United States. So we were still able to meet in person down in Huntsville, but it was no more than 2 weeks later. In fact, I had actually gotten an email saying someone had COVID at the conference, and everybody that was there basically had to quarantine because that was so early on that none of us could have gotten a test at that point. And so I remember distinctly that, and that's when it pretty much everything got shut down at that point. And so I'm sure, to your point, that just completely, I mean, it shut down a lot of those recovery efforts to where, you know, you said it. I remember seeing some of those blue tarps probably around the Germantown area you're talking about that are still around it, you know, over a year now. So,
yeah. And, you know, again, it was a 1-2 punch, tornado, a couple weeks later, pandemic, but, you know, that still didn't derail Middle Tennessee. Folks were just incredible. Sure. So many, you know, hundreds of thousands of people volunteered time, money, supplies, everything. And so, you know, it's just like the Washington one. It's not going to happen in 1 year. It's going to take several years to rebuild, you know, and that's what's going to happen in Middle Tennessee and Nashville and Cookeville and Putnam County and all these places. But, you know, it's a process, and we're well underway, and here we are a year later, and it continues. You know, that's really you just got to move. You just got to keep going, I guess, right?
Well, and it's interesting too, and you and I don't dive too much into politics, but I guess I didn't put too much together. But during the just the article that I'm reading, Super Tuesday was just after that tornado. So you guys had primary elections down there, and I think they had to like delay opening some of the precincts because of it, or like getting some requests because of that. So it's just a lot of things were all screwed up because of this tornado. Something else that was interesting too, and I don't know if you did much. I know I did stuff here in Indianapolis because it was obviously such a huge story and a tornado hitting that area. But I don't remember, and you may off the top of your head. If you don't, it's fine. But I remember drawing a map of the path of the tornado that happened last year, and it was almost identical to I think there was a previous Nashville Tornado, and I don't remember the year off the top of my head.
I believe it was 98.
That sounds right.
I think it was 98. Yeah, I remember because I was at Lighthouse Christian School.
Okay.
I was in second period, and I remember being in the hallway with our hands over our heads, in the position for tornadoes to come through. You know what I mean?
Right.
As a kid, I remember that. Yeah. And it went right. It was almost identical. I want to say if you put the lines on top, the paths on top of each other, they intersect at some point.
Yeah, I just remember because I get fascinated by that stuff and the whole historical perspective. Because let's face it, luckily, major metropolitan areas don't get hit very often. I'm talking specifically downtown areas. You think of Dallas, you think of Oklahoma City. That would be you'd think that they would probably have a lot more destruction in their downtown area, and they haven't. It seems like Nashville's kind of taken more of the brunt, their downtown, more than some of those Central Plains. I just thought it was fascinating kind of comparing some of those tracks because they were extremely, extremely similar. So, I remember seeing that on social media. I thought it was fascinating. All right, so let's...
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
Let's switch gears real quick. Let's talk about your time in Florida. This was between Peoria and Nashville. You spent 4 years in Florida, right?
It was almost 4 years.
Okay.
It was a month shy, so I just rounded to 4 years.
Okay. So you had obviously thunderstorms in Florida, but now you've got warm weather all year round, basically. And now you just opened up a whole new avenue of forecasting, and that is hurricanes, which we do the generic stuff here, and obviously this last year was incredibly active.
Right.
And we show tracks and stuff like that, but you went through several tropical seasons. You took a direct hit from a hurricane too. Talk about what hurricane that was, what that was like, and I guess specifically, because I'm interested in it, how was your covering that on the air so much more different than, say, severe weather?
So tropical forecasting is an entirely different beast. Your Midwestern storms just don't behave the same way as tropical storms do. And it's just, I guess the biggest thing is they're just so large in coverage. They can be anyways. And so it's a lot of forecasting and waiting. You know what I mean?
Right.
With your Midwest storms, it's just all right, 2 days out, it's coming. But with a tropical storm, you get to watch this thing brew up in the southern Atlantic Ocean, or not the southern, just the Atlantic Ocean, excuse me. And you just wait for a week and a half for it to finally get here. So you have a lot more time to prepare for it. But what I found out a lot in Florida was people were like, "Oh, I've been through this before, I'll be fine." And, it comes through, and a lot of people aren't prepared to be without power for 2 weeks. And that's exactly what happened with Irma. Irma was, when it made landfall, it was a Category 4, I believe.
Okay. And
it hit just south of Marco Island, which was my viewing area, so southwest Florida. And, had that storm had stayed along the western coastline of Florida versus cutting in early, it would have made a huge difference as far as storm surge goes. So, I was in where I lived at the time, I was in evacuation zone A. So had Irma stayed on its current path, it was predicted that my entire first floor of my apartment was going to be underwater. So
Whoa.
10 feet. So, we moved everything from the first floor that we could up to the second floor. We duct taped the front door. Not that was going to do anything, but we were just trying anything.
That's thinking, baby. I like it.
Yeah. And so we were trying to duct tape it and do whatever we could. And, we put our storm shutters up on our windows and our back patio door and everything. And, again, thankfully, Irma curved in to the coastline about 25 to 30 miles south of the previous forecasting location, landfall location, and that saved so many people's possessions. Because, what's interesting about southwest Florida is, the southern tip of Florida is pretty much the Everglades. you know,
Right.
and you have just a whole thing of mangroves, and mangroves help to basically shield you from storm surge a little bit, if you will. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
And so south of Marco Island, there's just nothing out there. It's the Everglades. You know, no
Right.
one lives out there. There might be a few houses, but for the most part, no one lives out there. So, and that's where landfall ended up basically happening, which was kind of a best worst case scenario. You know what I mean?
Sure.
The best of the situation that it could be.
Right.
And so that helped out a little bit. But still, you know, as Irma basically went up the spine of Florida, which is basically right up the middle of it, you know, it dropped several inches of water, of rain. You know, we had wind gusts. I want to say our top wind speed was 192.
Wow.
I think at the Naples airport, I think it was 192. I know it was over 170, but I want to say it was 192 was the peak.
Wow.
But it was just crazy. And one of the things that I learned from that storm is something called sheet flow. Basically, you know, the storm rides up the spine of Florida, and then all that water that's up there in northern Florida, it's got to go somewhere. So it comes back down through South Florida, and it washes out through the Everglades.
Wow.
So what was interesting is our flooding got worse after the storm had passed.
Interesting.
Like 2 or 3 days afterwards, all that water in northern Florida came back through Southwest Florida, and our waters went up, you know, another couple of inches. And so the flooding got worse after the storm had passed. And I thought that was one of the most fascinating things about that particular storm, you know?
Sure. So how was it dealing with coverage on television? Because tornadoes you can be on for hours, but I mean, when you're talking a hurricane, you could be on for literally days. Right.
Yeah. So we did. So where I worked, we were an ABC and an NBC affiliate.
Okay.
But we operated as two different stations. So the ABC had 4 meteorologists, the NBC had 5 meteorologists. So in situations like that, we simulcast. And so all of a sudden, you've got a powerhouse team of 10 meteorologists on this storm. You know, it's incredible. So what we did is we had a landfall team and a post-landfall team. And we would do 12 on, 12 off. And we all stayed at the station. We all camped at the station for like 3 days.
Okay.
And so basically, you know, a handful of us would just talk about the new advisories that come out every 2 hours, the intermittent advisories that come out every 2 hours, the new advisories that come out every 6 hours, you know, every couple hours. That's the new information, showing where the storm is, what the shift is in the cone of uncertainty and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, we would just do 12 on and 12 off. So that's pretty much how the coverage went. And then, you know, obviously once the storm was probably within once it made landfall in the Keys, because it made landfall in the Keys and then it made landfall again in Southwest Florida, just south of Marco Island.
Okay.
And so basically once it got to the Keys, we were pretty much wall to wall for, I know it was at least 3 days. It might have been 4 days. So you're talking, what is that, 72 hours of straight hurricane coverage with basically no breaks in between. And it's incredible to see a group of people do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's crazy. I can't imagine being on the air that long, even with a group of people. I can't imagine being on the air that long. I think the only thing I have that compares to that in my career was before your time in Peoria, but I think I've talked to you about it, the Groundhog Day blizzard that we had, where we ended up getting like 16 inches of snow, but we had like 5-foot snow drifts, and we were snowed in at the station. And I was there for probably like 36 hours straight. But that's about as close as I can kind of compare it to.
Right.
Yeah, that's wild. And it's such a different beast, but I'm glad that you have been able to experience that, right? Because you've kind of went through all of the major, outside of, like you said, dust storms and wildfires, you've gone through basically all of the major weather scenarios that you could really deal with east of the Mississippi.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I guess winter-wise, maybe I haven't covered a true-on blizzard yet, but
right.
I mean, I mean, going back to the Peoria days, we had a record flood.
Yep.
I mean, I guess you can consider droughts as
sure,
not really a severe weather event, but there's still a
right.
big event, big weather event. We had a couple of droughts. We had some pretty big snowstorms. We had the Washington tornado outbreak. Right. And then in Florida, Irma was definitely the worst hurricane that I covered because it was a direct impact to my viewing area.
Sure.
But, we had some other close calls. I remember Hurricane Michael went up the East Coast. The same year we had Irma, we had Maria. We had Harvey. That was Harvey year at Houston when it just sat and spun and dropped like 60 inches of rain.
That's right.
All the same year. That was all 2017. And so, 2017 was just a crazy tropical year. And then, of course, last year topped that one.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's. I guess I'm fortunate to be that I was able to, get that experience. And it's made me a better meteorologist.
Sure.
Which is great. But, after doing this for a decade, like you said, we're weather nuts. We live for this sort of stuff. But I could totally be fine with forecasting 70s and sunshine 365 days a year,
It does make things a little less stressful, that's for sure. So, all right. Well, Cody, I'm proud of you, man. You have grown incredibly. It's been fun to watch you. And like I said, I'm just so glad you were able to make it back home close to your family, and you're rocking it, man. And I didn't say this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I didn't say this while we were recording. I said it before we were talking. But congratulations on your promotions to Monday through Friday at WSMV in Nashville, Tennessee. So hopefully this is kind of the beginning of your long-term having weekends off for a while. It's kind of nice to have weekends.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully so. Hey, yeah, right. Before I go, I do want to tell a fun story about how me and you met one of the first times.
Yes.
So, I'm a kid. I just graduated college, 2012.
Yes.
So I'm in Peoria at WMBD, and I remember we're sitting there. I want to say this is before I even hit the air for the first time.
Okay.
And so we're both sitting there, and he's like, Marcus is like, all right, let's practice a little bit. And, I'm so nervous. I'm, like, sweating. My face is so red, And you had this, like, buzzer on your phone, man. And I tell this story all the time. And I'm sitting there. He's like, all right. When you mess up, I'm going to buzz you, and we're going to start over. This is going to help out with your nerves. And I was like, okay. I tell you what, in the first 5 minutes, I probably got buzzed 100 times. This is like, hey, I'm Cody.
I think I did it for fun for a lot of it. That was good. I forgot that I did that.
I love telling that story because that's one of the fondest memories I have is initially getting into broadcast meteorology. And then that's just one of the stories that stuck with me for the long haul. And I just thought it was so funny.
And everybody you've told probably think that they're like, man, that Marcus Bailey's a jerk.
Yeah, sure. I tell you what, man, I can't wait until I get someone like me in 2012.
Right.
Man, I'm going to buzz them to death.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Now, see,
I'm going to get them.
I wouldn't have done that probably to anybody else. But only because it was hilarious, I did it to you because it was really funny. So,
well, I love it, man. I'm so glad you did it because that memory stuck with me, and I love telling that story.
Well, I hope at least 9 years, almost 10 years later, if you mess up, maybe in the back of your mind, you're still hearing that buzzer. So,
I'm still I still buzz myself every now and then. I'm
I love that.
That wasn't right.
See, if you learned anything from me, then there's that, and that's the legacy that I can keep. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, the buzzer beater. There he is.
That's it. All right, thank you. Oh, before I let you go, on the recorded version here, people want to reach out to you on social media. How can they get you?
All my Twitter all my handles are the same: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Cody Murphy WX. Made it real simple for everyone. Of course, you can email me, cody.murphy@wsmv.com. But the easiest way is obviously on social media. Again, that's Cody Murphy WX.
By the way, he's a great follow if you want to know more about Nashville weather, but he's also a big space nerd, and he posts a lot of stuff about space. So you always post a lot of cool stuff about that.
So that was another cool thing about living in Florida was that I was only about 4 hours from Cape Canaveral.
Nice.
So, even from Fort Myers, the other side of the state, at night, when you get night launches, you can still see those rockets go off. And you can see a tiny little dot burning up in the sky. So That was awesome. I went to Cape Canaveral, I think 3 different times. Go 16, our powerful satellite.
Right.
I was there for that. I watched it launch.
Nice.
I was at Cape Canaveral. I was about 2 miles away from it. And, man, if you ever get a chance to go to Cape Canaveral for a rocket launch, I mean, SpaceX is doing them almost bi-weekly now.
Right.
Go check them out. It is one of the coolest experiences ever. The feeling of the rocket, I mean, even from 4 or 5 miles away, you can feel the rumbles in your chest. It is insane. Go check it out.
Now you sold me, and now I need to go check it out because I'm insanely jealous about that. All right. Cody, thank you for spending time with me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
My thanks again to meteorologist Cody Murphy at WSMV in Nashville, Tennessee. Catch him weekday mornings, Monday through Friday. And again, follow him on social media as well. And he brings up all those good points. Look, we're right in the beginnings of what could be a very active severe weather season. So make sure you have a preparedness plan for your home, for your work, for your school. It could save your life because you just never know when severe weather may strike in your area. My thanks to you as well for checking out the podcast, Weather Weekly, a weekly podcast. And we love to hear your thoughts. You can always reach out to me on social media, Marcus Bailey Weather at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can reach me via email at marcus.bailey@wishtv.com. And we hope to see you and hear you next time right here on Weather Weekly on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Discover more from Storm Track 8 Weather and Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Plus, be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.